Hey pals, I'm here today to talk to you about the novels that are coming out in the first half of 2022 that I'm very excited to pre-order and read. So I've already done a short story version of this, which I'll link in the cards above in case you're interested. And I decided to do a whole video focused on novels because there was loads of novels I was excited about in the first half of the year, and I managed to trim it down as much as possible so that I was just capturing the ones that I'm definitely going to pre-order, and it happens to reach 22. So 22 novels in the first half of 2022. I sort of like how that sounds. I'm not going to do this in publication order, which is what I usually do. Instead, I'm going to talk about them in three groupings. One is books by authors that I've read before. The second is books by authors who I haven't read before but do have previous novels out, so it's not their debut. And then the larger chunk of the list is books by debut authors. I always read lots and lots of books by debut authors. I love finding new authors to follow, and yeah, a big chunk of this list is debut authors. The first book I'm going to talk about, with perhaps the best title of all 22 of them, is I Love You But I've Chosen Darkness by Claire Vaye Watkins. This one comes out on the 20th of January. So I have a mixed history with this author, and this is perhaps the one that's the most risky on this list, but I'm also incredibly excited for it and have got it on pre-order. I tried to read her debut short story collection, which was called Battleborn. I think I read 2 or 3 stories and DNF'd it. I just didn't think they were that memorable, even though it got loads of critical acclaim. And then I read her debut novel, which is called Gold, Fame, Citrus. I loved the premise of it. I loved the writing style. She writes absolutely beautifully, very wordy and lyrically, but beautifully. But in the final third it got super messy, the characters became really flat, and yeah, it was just a mess of a novel really. It felt like she didn't really know how to pull it together. But yeah, I keep going back. And another thing I'll say about this author is she focuses around quite similar themes, in that her father was a member of the Manson cult, and her debut novel was focused around a woman who went to go join a sort of a commune in the desert, which effectively ended up being a cult, and some quite weird stuff went down. And this sounds a little bit similar. So in this we follow a wife and a mother who decides to go and give some sort of speaking engagement as part of her job, and then get sort of tangled up with some people who live in the desert, and sort of uses it as an escape from her life. So yeah, I don't know how similar this is going to be plot-wise, but it sounds like thematically it's going to be similar to Gold, Fame, Citrus. I'm hoping that with this being her second novel and similar themes, she'll work through those topics much better, and the sort of plot and character development will be as strong as I know her writing style already is, so fingers crossed. And the next one, which comes out on March 10th, is Sundial by Catriona Ward. This has a fantastic cover. I read The Last House on Needless Street in 2021, really enjoyed it, except for like, I was unsure about the twisty ending, but definitely want to continue to read this author's work, and I will read her backlog of books as well, because she has a few others I haven't read. This is also set in the Mojave Desert, so yeah, quite interesting that the first 2 books are set in the same location, and also sounds a bit like it's about a cult, I'm unsure. So it says that Rob fears for her 2 daughters, and she can sense a darkness in one of them, so she decides to take them back to her childhood home of Sundial, which is in the Mojave Desert. And it says that Callie, who is the one who is a bit weird, is afraid of her mother, and she has begun to wonder if only one of them will leave Sundial alive. So it sounds really creepy. I love the way this author writes horror, just spectacular, so very excited for this one. And then on April the 28th we have The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. All I know is that this is a sequel to A Visit from the Goon Squad, which I think came out around 10 years ago. I read it around 10 years ago at least, and I remember really enjoying it. It was a book that was famous for having a whole segment that was a PowerPoint presentation, and it was a collection of sort of different narratives and all these characters interlinked. Now, it's difficult to judge the reader I was 10 years ago. I read this book just before I really got back into reading. I'd taken a few years out when I was at university and didn't really read for pleasure. And yeah, my reading has massively changed, my reading taste has massively changed. But I think what my plan is to reread A Visit from the Goon Squad, and if I still enjoy it, to carry on and read The Candy House, this new one. And yeah, just see what I think. I've never read any of her other books, so yeah, this one will be interesting to see if a decade older me still enjoys A Visit from the Goon Squad and then goes on to enjoy this new one. And then on the 7th of June we have Woman of Light by Fajardo-Anstine. I read her short story collection, Sabrina and Karina. I think the year before last and thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I pretty much marked her as an author who, whatever she brought out, regardless of what the blurb said, I would want to read it. So I haven't really read the blurb, but I will just read you the very start. It says, a dazzling epic of betrayal, love and fate that spans 5 generations of an indigenous Chicano family in the American West, from the author of the Sabrina and Karina. Yeah, we follow, I think, 5 generations, but I think we are following women. Yeah, the Lopez family fill the pages of the multi-generational Western saga. Woman of Light is a transfixing novel about survival, family secrets and love, filled with an unforgettable cast of characters, all of whom are just as special, memorable and complicated as our beloved heroine Liz. So yeah, like I said, pretty much read anything, and I would highly recommend that you read Sabrina and Karina. It's an excellent short story collection. But yeah, also I think she's just an author to watch. And the last one by an author I've read before is Mischief by Zoe Gilbert. This one comes out on the 17th of March. Her first novel / short story collection was called Folk. And I read that and I think I gave it 3 stars. So Folk was an interlinked short story collection in which in each story you followed a different member of this community. And it was very inspired by British folklore, so very magical, but lots of elements of, I guess, like haunting or violent stuff. And yeah, I thought she wrote beautifully, but I didn't think there was much of a narrative arc. So with this one being much more of a novel in and of itself, I'm just intrigued. I feel like this could be brilliant, but I think it's really hard to write literary, fantastical stuff well. But yeah, whenever something has British folklore written in the blurb, I immediately want to read it. So, and the premise of this is we follow Herne, the hunter, mischief maker, spirit of the forest, leader of the wild hunt, as he hurtles through the centuries, pursued by his creator. He dons many guises, and it says, but as the forest is increasingly encroached upon by urban sprawl and gentrification, and the world slides into crisis, Herne must find a way to survive or exact his revenge. It says Mischief acts as British folklore as you've never read it before. Dangerous, sexy, troubling, daring, savage. An exhilarating race through time and space, weaving together the ancient and the contemporary. So yeah, fingers crossed, this one is excellent. Then I have 5 books by authors who I haven't read before, but this isn't their first novel. The first one comes out on the 20th of January, and that is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. I think that's how you say it. So this author released a book a couple of years ago called, I think, Migrations or something like that. The UK and the US title are different. And I heard mixed things about that one, but I've wanted to pick it up because it is sort of an environmental literary novel, which is something I really enjoy. And then I heard that this one was being released in the UK in January, and I thought I'm going to give this one a go first because it sounds more where my interests lie, and then if I really enjoy it I will clearly go back and read her first book. This sounds very similar to Wolf Border by Sarah Hall, which I absolutely loved and would encourage you to pick up. In that the initial premise of this is that I think we're following a woman who is involved in reintroducing wolves to Scotland, which is a sort of debate in the conservation field, in that this ecosystem, particularly in Scotland and sort of northern England, has been drastically affected by the fact that we pretty much removed all of our apex predators, and the reasons people say we need to kill deer are because there are so many of them because they're not being killed naturally by wolves. And so wolves would have a massive impact in good ways on the environment, but clearly people don't want wolves to be introduced because they think they'll kill the sheep and they'll kill small children and things like that. And the premise of this is that we're following a woman who's involved in that, and then I think bodies start to be found and the wolves are being accused, but it's sort of like a mystery and she doesn't think it is the wolves. So yeah, it sounds like it could be a blend of sort of literary environmental and murder mystery, with a sort of dark edge, which I like the sound of. This next one is a bit of an odd one, like where I place it, because this author's first novel was called The Night of the Flood. I borrowed it from the library in 2021 and I read the first 100 pages, which is about a third, and I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like in love with it, and I had a ridiculous amount of books out from the library, loads of books on my hold list, so I took it back. And this is her second novel called The Marsh House, it comes out on the 3rd of March. And yeah, so I've sort of read her first book, sort of not, so I put it in this category. I'm intrigued by this author because she writes historical fiction that are set in Norfolk, which is where I now live, and I think there are very few books, particularly contemporary books actually, set in East Anglia, but there seems to be more historical fiction coming out set in these regions because I think they're a fairly good location for sort of creepy historical fiction. And this one is one of those books that's set across 2 time periods. So we're following one woman in December 1962 who is renting a remote house on the Norfolk coast over Christmas because she wants her family to have a good time. They're trapped inside by a blizzard, and she comes across some notebooks of the teenage Rosemary, who was writing a diary in July 1931, and she lived there, and she sort of succumbed to the charm of this family that had moved into the area. And yeah, I think this woman in 1962 is finding out more and more about some sort of shady stuff that went down in the past, and yeah, it's about how she sort of deals with that, and I think this will have a gothic / ghostly edge. And yeah, I pretty much am being compelled to read it because it's set in Norfolk, but I do also like the sound of it. I like books that have a couple of different voices, both in historical settings. Then on the 3rd of May we have Mother Country by Jacinda Townsend. I'm going to read you a bit of the blurb of this one because it sounds quite plotty and I don't think I'll do it any justice. It's a transnational feminist novel about human trafficking and motherhood. It says, saddled with student loans, medical debt and the sudden news of her infertility after a major car accident, Shannon, an African-American woman, follows her boyfriend to Morocco in search of relief. There she finds a young girl who she thinks has been abandoned, so she decides to take her back to the US with her. But the girl already has a mother, Soria, an undocumented Mauritian woman who was trafficked as a teen and who managed to escape to Morocco to build a new life. In rendering Soria's separation from her family across vast stretches of desert and Shannon's alienation from her mother under the same roof, the author brilliantly stages cycles of intergenerational trauma and healing. Linked by the girl who has been a daughter to them both, these unforgettable protagonists move towards their inevitable reckoning. Mother Country is a bone-deep and unsparing portrayal of the ethical and emotional claims we make upon one another in the name of survival, in the name of love. Does that not sound fantastic? Cannot wait to read this one. Then on the 24th of May we have All the Things We Don't Talk About by Amy Feltman. I am going to try and stop myself from breaking my own rule here. I have a previous novel by this author called Willa and Hesper that looks and sounds brilliant, and I still haven't read it, so I'm going to make myself read that before I let myself pre-order this new one. That is my rule. This one sounds fantastic. The first one, Willa and Hesper, is about a queer relationship between 2 women. In this one we follow Morgan Flowers, who, raised by their neurodivergent father, have grown up haunted by the absence of their mother. Their mother ran off to have a relationship in France with another woman, and Morgan is questioning their gender identity when their mother comes back into their life. And it's about them trying to figure out what this means for them all, and build this new family. And at the same time as that, Julian, the father, has become unlikely pen pals and friends with Bridget, the woman his wife left him for. So it says this is a reckoning with the power and unintentional pain of a thoroughly modern family, and I just think that sounds like a really great family drama. I like the sound of this author's work, so we'll be picking this one up once I've read Willa and Hesper. And then on the 3rd of March we have No Land to Light On by Yara Zgheib. I haven't been able to find how you say this author's surname online, so I apologise if I got that wrong. This is a beautiful cover, and I'll definitely be pre-ordering this. It sounds amazing. It's being compared to An American Marriage, and we follow a young Syrian couple as the travel ban rips them apart. So Hyde has returned to Jordan to help bury his father, and when he tries to return to Boston in 2017 he's stopped at border control because of a hostile new immigration law, and his wife is heavily pregnant and she waits for him on the other side. It says, Sama and Hyde yearn for a way back to each other and to the life they dreamed up together, but does that life exist anymore, or was it only an illusion? It's the story of a family caught up in forces beyond their control, fighting for the freedom and home they found in one another. This has amazing advanced reviews from other authors, so yeah, this one sounds phenomenal. And now I'm on to the debuts. The first one I'm super excited about. I'm excited for all of these. This one's published by Granta. I think they're really good with the novels they select, and I just love the sound of this one, and that is Voilets by Alex Hyde. This is set in the dying days of World War II. And I know lots of people on BookTube say they don't really enjoy World War novels, and I would agree with that in part. I don't enjoy novels that focus on the conflict of world wars, but I very much enjoy novels that focus on the people left behind who have to try and keep their countries going, especially the changing face of women at the time. When you read about books set in the UK at least, lots of women who previously wouldn't have worked certain roles had to work those roles because suddenly there wasn't men left to do them, and I find that all really fascinating, and I find social history incredibly interesting. So in this we follow a young woman called Violet. Her pregnancy is over and she's no longer able to conceive. Her husband is deployed to Burma and she's sort of trying to find a way back to herself. And then we're following another woman called Violet in a small, watchful town in the Welsh valleys. She contemplates the fate she shares with her unborn child. Unwed, an overseas posting offers a temporary way out, so she goes to Naples and her body starts to show and she's having to sort of consider what she's going to do with her life. It says, between these two violets, sung into being like a babe in a nursery rhyme, a son. As their lives begin to intertwine, a spellbinding story of women's courage emerges, suffused with power, lyricism and beauty from an exhilarating new voice in British fiction. So yeah, love the sound of that one. Then on the 3rd of February we have one that I think will be on a lot of people's pre-order lists, and that is Beasts of a Little Land by Juhea Kim. This sounds amazing. It's set in 1917 before Korea is divided, and we follow a young girl who is sold to a courtesan school. She flees to Seoul and there she meets a young boy who is an orphan. He's begging on the streets, and she becomes a sought-out performer, and we follow both their lives as they're sort of entangled together. And she must decide between following her own ambitions or risking everything for the one she loves. It says, from the perfumed chambers of the courtesan school to the glamorous cafes of a modernising soul, the unforgettable characters of Beasts of a Little Land unveil a world where friends become enemies and enemies become saviours, where heroes are persecuted and beasts take many shapes. So yeah, sounds very intriguing. And then on the 3rd of February we have another historical fiction set in Norfolk. Now I think there's a lot of historical fiction coming out that's set in the UK that has a sort of gothic or horror edge to it, and I think it's quite hard to sift through and find ones that I would really enjoy. I think a lot of them I probably just find mediocre. But clearly I'm being drawn to this one because it's set in Norfolk, but also there's an excerpt with some of the writing from the book, and I think it reads beautifully. And yeah, sounds very sort of gothic. I'm hoping this is sort of like The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry, which I loved. So this is set in 1643, with a civil war tearing England apart. Thomas Treadwater is summoned home by his sister because she is accusing one of the house servants of witchcraft. It says, something has awoken and now it will not rest. He considers himself a rational man, but as he unravels the mystery of what has happened, he uncovers not a tale of superstition, but something dark and ancient linked to a shipwreck years before. So yeah, sounds very mysterious and gothic, and I can't wait to read this one. On the 10th of March we have another novel that focuses around a group of women, and that is Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong. It says, in this glittering triptych novel, Suzette, Maple and Agnes, three black women with albinism, call Shreveport, Louisiana home. At the bustling intersection of the American South and Southwest, these three women find themselves at the crossroads of their own lives. It says, this novel is told in 3 parts and is a searing meditation on grief, female strength and self-discovery, set against a backdrop of complicated social and racial histories. In these 3 narratives, among the yearning and loss, each of these women may find a seed of hope for the future. And yeah, each of their individual stories sound really intriguing, and I really love narratives where you have multiple POVs, particularly when those POVs come together to sort of comment on the social history of the time. So very excited for this one as well, of course. And on the 28th of April we have The Fields by Erin Young. Now, I'm hoping this is reminiscent in sort of style of a book like Idaho by Emily Rushkovich. So this is about a body is found in a cornfield in Iowa, the body of a young woman, and we're following this police officer as he begins to investigate. And there's lots of like small town drama and intrigue and gossip, and another body is found, and I believe the officer has sort of personal links to this person. And yeah, this is like a pressure cooker environment. So I'm unsure if this is going to be more like a crime thriller, like a police procedural, but I'm hoping it leans more towards, like I said, something like Idaho, that's much more focused on the people, and the sort of mystery itself is less a part of the narrative. So fingers crossed this is like a dark literary novel. Then on the 19th of April we have The Crocodile Bride by Ashleigh Pedersen. This is a coming of age novel, and we follow an 11-year-old girl who is living with her father. This is set in 1982, and they live in the swampy location of Fingertip, Louisiana. And this is going to be quite a difficult read. You may know that I love coming of age stories, particularly focused around young girls. And in this one, she lives alone with her father, and as her body starts to change, things start to become a bit dark for her at home. And she remembers a story her grandmother told her about this myth of the Crocodile Bride, and she feels that's the only way she can turn. So she tries to find the Crocodile Bride. So I think this is going to have touches of like magical realism, but I think clearly it's also going to be grounded in quite a dark story. And yeah, I'm hoping this one is not too difficult to read. It's being compared to Helena Yemi and Jesmond Ward, which is quite a good coupling there. So yeah, fingers crossed this is one to love. Then on the 26th of April we have Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Lee. When Lily, our protagonist, was 11 years old, her mother disappeared. And now, as a mother herself, she's sort of become obsessed with finding out what happened to her mother, and she sort of starts to look back into the history of when her mother disappeared in 1987, and when they lived in a small British Columbia mining town where there was only a handful of Asian families. And yeah, she starts to look back and uncover some of the things she didn't really understand about her mother's life. And yeah, eventually she's sent to Southeast Asia on a clue that she's given to try and seek her mother out. This is a beautifully written and affecting novel about motherhood, family, secrets, migration, isolation and mental illness, and those are all things I really enjoy reading about in novel form, so I'm hoping this is a really excellent debut. And then on the 12th of May we have one that I think will make a lot of people's lists as well, because it sounds really intriguing and plotty, and that is Wildfires by Sophie Jai. So we know that our protagonist Cassandra doesn't know much about her family's history. There's lots of things that are secret. She has a cousin called Chevy who never speaks, and nobody talks about why he doesn't speak. And she gets a call from one of her sisters asking her to go back to Toronto because Chevy has died. And when she gets there, it says the tension is brewing between her mothers and aunts, has been brewing for decades in the making. Sooner or later, every secret, unspoken word and painful memory will find its way out into the open. And this moves between Toronto and Trinidad. So yeah, I think this sounds like a really great family drama with lots of sort of mysteries and secrets to uncover. And then on the 17th of May we have We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies, brilliant cover and title. I don't know how to say this author's name. I've tried to find out but cannot find out, so I apologise, but you can see the author's name there on the cover. This is about a Tibetan family's journey through exile. I don't think I've ever read a book about anyone from Tibet, so that's exciting. It says, in the wake of China's invasion of Tibet in 1959, Lao Mo and her younger sister Tienki managed to get to a refugee camp in Nepal, but their parents don't survive the journey. They then meet a young man who brings with him an ancient statue of the nameless saint, a relic known to vanish and reappear in times of need. Decades later, the sisters are separated, and Tenki is living with Lao Mo's daughter, Dolma, in Toronto. But Dolma comes across the nameless saint in a collector's vault. She must decide what she is willing to do for her community, even if it means risking her dreams. It says this is a gorgeously written meditation on colonisation, displacement, and the lengths will go to remain connected to our family and ancestral years. Told through the lives of 4 people over 50 years, this novel provides a nuanced, moving portrayal of the little-known world of Tibetan exiles. So, oh my god, I cannot wait for this one. On the 9th of June we have These Impossible Things by Salma El-Wardany. This follows a group of British Muslim friends and their lives, and they experience a night together which changes everything, and you watch the fallout of that night and follow them afterwards. I love books that focus on a group of female friends, particularly when there's some sort of mystery that they are all trying to keep secret, and watching how that same moment can impact different people. This is making me think of the book Expectations by, and I can't remember the author's name, so I'll put it along here, which was about a group of friends who all ended up with the life the other one wanted, and how all those sort of secrets and resentment built up. So I think this book will feature those themes, and I'm hoping it is excellent. And the last one, Peach Blossom Spring by Melissa Fu, comes out on the 17th of March. I was a bit unsure about this one because I find the cover and the title both a bit sickly sweet, but the blurb does sound really interesting and it's getting really good advanced reviews from lots of historical fiction writers, so I am willing to give this one a go, and I think again this will be a really popular one. So in 1938 in China, the Japanese are advancing and a young mother, Mei Lin, is forced to flee with her 4-year-old son and embark on an epic journey across China. Years later her son has settled in America and his daughter wants to know more about her heritage, but he refuses to talk about his childhood. It says it spans continents and generations, is a bold and moving look at the history of modern China, told through the story of one family. It's about the power of our past, the hope for a better future, and the search for a place to call home. And yeah, you probably found out that throughout this video I do really enjoy books that have multiple characters who are perhaps in different periods of time, and how the commentary from those characters can form a more whole story. I really enjoy books where you see a moment from one character's perspective and you maybe deeply sympathise or think they're really wrong, and then you hear the same moment told from a different character who experienced it, and what you did think completely changes because you have much more context for that moment. I really love that, and so yeah, there's a lot of books coming out this year that I think feature that, set across different generations or different countries, which are things I just really love. So a lot of those types of books made the list. So yeah, let me know if any of these books are on your list or you've added them because of this video, and also let me know if there's any you think I am missing. I think I have enough to be getting on with, but yeah, always intrigued to know if there are more. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!